Next year is going to be slow.
Call the meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We have a quorum right now. Commissioner Pence is on the phone. Everyone's present. Is your mic on? It is now. Can you make sure Mr. Pence can hear you? Mr. Pence, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, excellent. Could everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The town values and welcomes public input. Please address the commission as a whole and not individual council commission members. Do not address staff or members of the audience. Commission action on items brought up and called to the public is limited by the open meeting law. The commission may direct staff to study the matter and reschedule for further consideration at a later date. Items on the agenda will not be heard or discussed and called to public. Individuals are limited to 3 minutes. Any members would like to speak during call to public? Moving on, C, minutes. Consider the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of Deputy Town Clerk, the Planning and Zoning Commission held on April 13th, 2023. Did the members of the commission have an opportunity to review, read them for the accuracies? Do you have any questions, concerns, or discussion regarding those minutes?
None.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission held on April 13th, 2023.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's Mr. Pence. Mr. Pence, we can't hear you. Could you repeat?
I approve.
Okay. That's unanimous. Moving on, new business D. Public comment will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item. After the subject has been announced by the chairman and explained by staff, any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item before or after commission discussion. Questions from the commission members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the chairman at any time. D1, discussion the legal action regarding the implementation of a political sign-free zone. Director Lloyd.
Yes, sir. So this item tonight on the agenda, we're considering 2 political sign-free zones. We can have a max of 2 and a total of 3 square miles. We're looking at a total of less than 4/10 of a square mile. And 2 different zones that would capture SR 260, White Mountain Boulevard in the entirety. They would also extend to the 3 parks, Woodland Lake Park, Mountain Meadows, and Jack Barker Park. The proliferation of political signs during an election can get out of control rapidly and take away from the natural beauty and may make some areas hard to navigate due to cluttering of signs at intersections. State statute allows for creating 2 political sign-free areas as mentioned within a municipality. These zones, restrictions outlined in ARS 16-1019F political signs, printed materials, tampering, violation, classification, city-town classification, exceptions in certain commercial zones on cities and towns do not apply to commercial tourism, commercial resort, and hotel sign-free zones as municipalities designate those zones. The requirements of those zones, as I mentioned, shall not be larger than 3 square miles, and 4/10 is what we're looking at, square miles. Each zone shall be identified as a specific contiguous area where by resolution of the municipal governing body, the municipality has determined that based on a predominance of commercial tourism, resort and hotel uses within the zone, placement of political signs within the rights of way in the zone will detract from the scenic and aesthetic appeal of the area within the zones and deter its appeal to tourists. As mentioned, we can only have 2 at most, and they may be identified by the municipality. Cities and towns can remove political signs in these designated sign-free zones, even if they meet all the requirements of 16-1019.
Thank you. I'm gonna move to the public first, Commissioner Williams, and then we'll go back. Discussion.
No, I have a discussion on the first part of it.
Well, we can talk about that. I'm gonna have first. Okay. I have one request. Mr. Abuse, would you like to hit the podium on the D1? Thank you for taking the time to come visit us here.
Oh, thank you, Chairman Salskoff, Vice Chair Turner, and commissioners. Thank you for listening here. So I look at this, and this is basically, there's no signs in any of the major thoroughfares through our community here. And while I'm glad to see we get rid of some of the clutter, as someone who's run for public office in this community in the past and put signs in some places, I think it would be more fitting to designate some areas, and I would say maybe just 2 areas. For example, one that comes to mind is as you're approaching the stoplight down there to turn onto Porter Mountain. That's not a real nice looking area anyway. So political signs don't necessarily clutter it up that much. I would say why not for 50 to 100 yards there, allow the signs to be there and restricting them to that area and perhaps one other area, but even one area would be good. But I just think for those running for office, it'd be nice to have an area where they could put signs. Anyway, that's, I'm glad to see, because I don't think they belong around the parks and places like that. But I do think as a community, we need to have some designated area where they can put signs for running for public office. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move it to discussion. Commissioner Williams, you have some pertinent information here on this?
Well, no, I'm just talking in the beginning of this. It says public comment will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced. But then it says any citizen who wishes may speak one time after or before this commission discussion. It kind of contradicts.
What's that have to do with the issue? Let's not.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring that up before we brought up the issue.
It's
Commissioner Williams, it's okay to allow anybody who wishes to speak from the public to go first. If they want to come back and address after discussion, the chairman can allow that.
Yeah, I have the power to have. Let's not dive into that because that doesn't have any effect on what we're talking about today. So let's talk about the signs and moving forward on that, not the procedural reading of it if you don't like the vernacular. So, Commissioner Kinsley.
Is there any way we can put restrictions on the size of the signs? Because
There already is restrictions on the size of the signs, and I believe it's set by statute already. It's like 16 square feet, I believe.
So what would
Set by
that give us?
statute.
What would that give us, Jeremiah? What size would that give us? 16 square feet?
It's a 4x4. And I think it depends on whether it's in residential or the commercial area.
Can we make
Our
it any
code
smaller?
dictates that
Can we
already.
make it any smaller than that? Because Mr. Buse wanted to have it down around Penrod. Maybe it wouldn't be so cluttered if they were smaller signs instead of the huge signs. Is there any way we can restrict that?
I believe we have to follow the statute, which our code's already married to, as
Okay.
far as what the size limitations are. The hard part is enforcing it on like state candidates. This would grant us the ability to contact them. That's one of the requirements of the statute, that they have to have their contact information on, say, hey, you have 2 weeks, we're gonna remove your sign, and we take it, and then we hold it for a period of time, say another 2 weeks after that. If they don't come get their sign, then we are able to get rid of the sign. So one of the things I would like to mention, though, is that you still have the ability as a political candidate to use your soft skills and approach the businesses and say what you represent and let them know that you want to help them or whatever your agenda is, and explain that, and then ask them for permission if they support you, and ask them for permission, and that's allowable. Now, this would also enact a clause within the code where you'd have to do similar in areas even where it's allowed. And so basically, if you put it in the right of way in an area that's allowed, you have to get the property owner's permission behind you to do that as well. So
Is
it's kind
that
of
not
two
currently, do you not have to get permission from the property owner?
Not in the right of way, not currently, it's not in the code. So I added that, and if I may, just read how the code's gonna, how it'd be spelled out for political signs. So there's a brief section on political signs in the code under signs not requiring a permit because they do not require a permit. And I'm gonna jump specifically, so it's already, political signs not more than 16 square feet to answer Commissioner Kenslick's question. In residential lots and 32 square feet, non-residential properties are permitted during the election campaign. As I mentioned, that's married up to state statute, so I don't think that we can change that or restrict that any further. Provided that campaign signs are not posted for more than 60 days preceding the election and are removed within 15 days following the election. Political signs may be freestanding or wall-mounted to a building, or fence-mounted, roof-mounted signs are not permitted. Political signs may not be affixed to utility poles or traffic signs and shall not in any way present a traffic hazard or vision obstruction. Now, sometimes that's the case in the area around Border Mountain and Penrod when they gets out of control sometimes, and you'll see like 20 signs there. You also see that right out in front of Town Hall here. So, and then I added additional sections to that code. That was basically the end of it. And so what we're proposing is that White Mountain Boulevard and the first 450 feet of Porter Mountain Road and White Mountain Boulevard, as well as Woodland Lake Road and White Mountain Boulevard, including Woodland Lake Park, from Woodland Road and White Mountain Boulevard to the southern boundary of Mountain Meadows Park, are designated as commercial tourism, commercial resort, and hotel sign-free zone. The political signs are allowed to be placed in any right-of-way, or no political signs are allowed to be placed in the right-of-way in this area. All residential commercial zones, prior to placing any political sign in the right-of-way, this is also the new section, those placing the political sign shall first receive written permission from the adjoining property owner to place a political sign in front of that property. If the political sign is placed on private property, written permission from the underlying property owner must be obtained prior to placement. In addition to the above-mentioned requirements, all political signs shall comply with ARS Section 6-1019, and that's basically the state statute for political signs. Says everything that has to be contained on there as far as, you know, how to contact you. That was one of the things that we saw across the board last time was there was a lot of signs, not just local, but like state level, county level, that did not meet that requirement. So we technically could have pulled the sign because of that, because it didn't meet the statutory requirements. So that's kind of the starting point for the conversation. Hopefully you guys had a chance to look at the map, and I'd like feedback to what you guys think.
Currently, do you need the neighbor to approve a sign? But you would need that in the future?
Right, if you put it in the right of way, right now you don't need that. What we're proposing is that you'd have to get the property owner's permission behind that, that's correct.
I think it's reaching a little bit to get written approval.
I agree.
Verbal would be fine with that.
Well, I mean, I think it's, that you gotta get approval. I mean,
The only problem with the verbal is we don't know then in that case. The town doesn't know if you have the permission.
would you create a
You
form?
may have gotten verbal from the property owner, but if we come to you and say, well, there's a complaint or whatever, or we question whether the sign is legitimate, or it doesn't meet all the statutory requirements, or if it doesn't meet the code requirement, then we don't know for sure if it does or not. If you tell us, if you have written proof, it's no different than temporary sign permit, where we require the same thing.
Yeah, but the problem is you're gonna be rat chasing candidates. Come on, let's be realistic. Who's gonna do it?
I agree.
We have someone just that can do that, can call the state, the federal, the local, all the candidates?
We already did that last time with Chelsea. She was working on that, to that effect.
Are you gonna create like a portal with this, like a form, and they just go in, like, yeah, I approve it on the form? I mean, that would be the only way to make
Like
it
an online form submittal?
I don't think so.
You should do it. I mean, that, if you're gonna do this, it needs to be like uniform, otherwise, I mean, it could be like, yes, you can, or a gigantic thing. I mean, I'm
Well,
like Mr.
they'd have to be able to upload like written permission or attest to the fact that they have permission. from the underlying property owner, and then we could go with that, I guess, unless the property owner said, hey, I never gave them permission, then we'd have a reason to.
So, in regards to Mr. Buse's question, if we opened up that area at Porter Mountain, would that eliminate the contiguous
No,
that we're looking for?
no.
Okay.
The nice thing about that area is it's safe. You can pull off and put your signs down, pull them out,
Right,
and get out of traffic.
except for it's still very, very tacky every political
Oh.
season. And I agree, it's not the nicest looking area, but now we're making it look worse. So is that what we want to?
Yeah, we're forcing them all into one section.
Yeah,
And I mean, I don't know, but to me, it's like, who even reads a sign? You know, I'm sure there's people that do, you drive your car, it's a
Right.
distraction altogether in and of itself.
now if you have permission from, say, Hallmark, for example, they approved somebody putting a sign out in front.
There goes.
It would not be in the right of way, it would have to be like
On the
on
private
their
property.
building, or could it be there in their
Parking
grass
lot,
berm?
Yes.
Okay,
Would someone else need to approve Hallmark sticking it there? Are we- No?
I'm sorry, what was the
But
question?
no one behind Hallmark would have to approve it though, right?
well,
Like,
yeah, so Hallmark would approve
No,
that.
they would approve it in that case.
yeah.
Yeah, the underlying property owner.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add just a quick thought. And one of the reasons why we're looking at this is, you know, this state ordinance came about to help benefit tourist-driven economies to keep their aesthetic look through their towns looking, you know, nice, appealing to our visitors. Under the current laws, from the 1st of June through the November election and 2 weeks after that election, signs can be left up. So for our busiest part of the season, we have these clusters, huge clusters of signs throughout town. And so that was one of the reasons why, you know, everybody talks about the beauty of the community, preserving trees, the buildings are deteriorating, things like that. So this is just another effort to have a discussion and see if we can help to regulate this. And I think the thing that softens it is to get permission from business owners to allow you to put their signs on those properties. So that's where we're coming from. It's like 5 months of having political signs. So what happens is, if you lose in the primary, you have to take your signs down. We all know that doesn't happen, to a certain degree.
But we don't enforce that, so then we're gonna enforce this other thing?
We did
Well, we
enforce
do.
that. We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, we have taken them down after that period, after the,
There's no fines
Most
or anything?
people actually came and removed them. There was a
Yeah.
few candidates we had to
Yeah.
contact and remind them to remove their signs.
but then you still have, if a candidate won their primary, then they can keep their signs up continually. Some areas in some states have a period in between the primary and the general where you have to take your sign down, then you can put them back up again. But here in Arizona, it's a continual, for the winners of the primary, they can keep their signs up for 5
I think I'm,
So,
Mr. Stewart, like, we're just jamming them all into one section. I mean, for me personally, I don't see any value to the sign, period, but
I don't
I'm
see,
from
I
the-
don't see any value in doing that. In fact, who's gonna vote for somebody based on a sign? Let's hope that they're investigating these candidates and it's not
Yeah.
coming off of a sign.
I think signs is something that we did in like 1965, like, you know, it's just, but I understand the value. You have the constitutional right and freedom of speech, and maybe everyone doesn't have access to the internet, but.
I think there's definitely proof for top-of-mind awareness for a shopper, a buyer, anybody who's looking at political candidates. I think there's, even for the young generation that maybe isn't investigating, looking through everything, they might go off of who had the biggest sign. Unfortunately, that's not a great way to make a choice, but, so, like, we have, I saw the 32 square feet, a 4x8 sheet of whatever could go up and be a sign. I mean, there's no way for us to regulate that down to a maximum.
I don't believe that we can because
billboard.
that's married up with statute, so.
Yeah,
I mean, you do a 16x2.
I know, 32 square foot. I mean, and the 4x8 just stands out to me. Like, so that's our city statute or state, and
It's
we don't have
both.
yeah.
It's both.
And we don't have a way to modify that in our town.
No. The only thing we can do is limit the signs by creating a political sign-free zone for tourism and to enhance the aesthetic appeal of the area. So other communities that do this, there are others, we wouldn't be the first. Scottsdale does it, Prescott does it, Fountain Hills does it, Eager actually does it, all along Main Street. So that, I mean, there's other places that do this. We ain't the first. Recently, there was a bill that I'll briefly touch on that was in the state Congress. And it proposed some creative math to actually further limit the political sign-free zones. And it passed, and the governor vetoed it because she, and this was her words, not mine, she said, who's asking for more political signs? What problem does this solve? And she vetoed the bill. So I actually, when we put it on hold last time, that was going through the chamber right then, and so that didn't pass because the governor vetoed it. So basically, it kept in force what's already there, because they created something called a REOC zone that was like a sphere around a circular area around it that had to match up certain math, like 10% over the total area. It was a pretty weird formula, and neither one of the zones made it if that would have passed. So I would have had to revise it. Fortunately, it didn't.
I can't visualize this as an issue right now, to be honest. Do we have photos? I mean, it's clearly an issue. Does the town have photos of this problem from last year or the year before? Or did no one
You don't
memorialize
recall?
There was
Last?
I really don't.
If
I just
Oh my
drive
gosh.
through and,
We all recall.
yeah, I just really don't. I can't, I'm the wrong person on this one because I just don't.
I mean, you guys did a study on this, right?
Well, we looked at it and we can see, you know, it detracts. It's obvious that it detracts from the aesthetic and scenic beauty of the area.
So this is
Do you
what
want to
they're
go to an
asking for.
area that has
That's-
thousands
instead
of
talking
signs,
about
or an
this.
area that you could actually see the scenery?
So, like, you know, looking at the red lines on the map that is presented, I mean, that's essentially, it's like 100% of our,
We only have
Yes,
one
it
road
is.
going through
That's the
town,
thing, we're so small, you can't
right.
compare it to Ahwatukee.
so,
or Scottsdale, or Fountain Hills.
like, you know, but at the same time, so that's 100% of our zone, but then, just for my clarity, if I go to Hallmark and put my sign up, I can still put it there,
Yes.
outside of the right of way.
Yes, or anywhere else if you have permission.
But yet also, let's just say that, I mean, and so the rule that it maybe is being changed is that they have to go get permission.
And they can't put it in the right of way. They have to put it on private property. So they have to go and have the conversation with people who, you know, could
So
potentially
right
vote
now,
for
though,
it.
if they put it in Hallmark and out of the right of way, Hallmark's not allowed to just go remove it because it's on their property?
No, you have to ask permission.
Yeah,
It's on
so,
my property, you know, I mean, like, you
in
know.
the private property, I'm sure that they could remove it. The state statute's pretty clear. It just says, not allowed to remove it in the right of ways.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you have permission, then it's a different story.
You
have
know, a good
permission.
example is our marquee at Woodland and you know, at the theaters there. Looks like crap with those people have business signs and everything there. Looks horrible.
Sandwich signs.
And the same thing
Now
happens at Parker.
that is something that they see when they turn down to the park. Are we on that?
So we have been on that. There has been numerous complaints that came in primarily through the mayor asking us to limit that. There's somebody out there that has a sign that says hot dogs, fries, Cokes, or whatever, like every
Antiques.
10 feet, they
Yeah.
have their whole menu on the sidewalk, right? So that's one instance where we have, but think about what we saw, you know, last year at Jack Barker. There was just signs everywhere. There were signs up and down everywhere and just all over the place.
I was part of it.
I know you were
Jeremiah.
part of it.
I
You
know.
were part of it. You had more signs than anybody.
So, and honestly, I agree with you. I mean, I really do.
And the
I agree
signs
with
are
you.
getting uglier and uglier as far as what they're saying.
Yeah, I agree. It's not necessarily a hard no. It's a go have the conversation and see if you can get support from
Which you
people
should do.
outside of the right of way.
Yes.
So I will make a motion to recommend approval of a political sign-free zones to the town council.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Pence says aye. So I got Commissioner Stewart, Kinslick for no.
Raise your hands who was aye.
Yeah. Williams? All those opposed?
I like the idea of one or two designated areas.
So That,
So would you like to amend the motion, make a,
I would, yeah.
but they already made a motion, so the motion is.
They made the motion and it passed.
there was a motion and a second.
There was supposed to be a discussion, but there was no discussion.
Yeah, so so they seconded it, so you're
Nay.
nay, and and I'm gonna abstain. So,
It passed.
it passed. All right. Moving on, adjournment. No further items, this meeting is adjourned.